Next, cyclists in the East Midlands are beginning to flex their political muscles with demands for more spending on infrastructure. They say Nottingham's new tram lines are posing problems, with bike riders falling as they cross the tracks. And cyclists in Derby say a new bridge has been built without bike lanes. But councils in both cities insist they do take their safety seriously. Chris Doidge got on his bike to take a closer look.
From unpredictable pedestrians to one or two dodgy drivers. There's always someone for cyclists to have a beef with. But now there are some additional obstacles, particularly in Nottingham. This footage shows how dangerous an obstacle the tram lines can be. No major injuries this time, but others have been less fortunate. Kevin came off on the tram lines in October. His recovery has been slow.
Riding home from work, as I turned the corner here, my tyre clipped the tram track and locked into place. It threw me off into the curbstone, and the curbstone severed my arm here, just cut straight through the bone. So it was 5 days in Queen's Medical Centre and 5 hours of surgery to plate it all up and put the pins in. You know, we're getting mixed messages about cycling. On the one hand, people say cycle, it's good for the environment, it's good for you. On the other hand, they build this and take the cycle paths away, which puts us in conflict with either traffic or with tram tracks.
And so across the city, lessons have begun to teach cyclists how to stay clear of the tram lines. The University of Nottingham is funding these sessions, which show cyclists how to avoid some of the pitfalls.
Whatever angle the tram track is at, you want to cross it perpendicularly.
Cyclists, as any other form of transport, need to be confident and have the right skills and resources to be able to ride the bike, but also there needs to be the infrastructure there in place to make it safe and easy to do so.
Nottingham City Council says the design of the tram network was developed with local cycle groups. It admits some areas are high risk, but says bespoke arrangements have been put in place to assist cyclists. Finally, based on the original tram line, it says it expects fewer accidents on the lines once construction work has been completed and cyclists become more familiar with the new routes. In Derby, the Derby Cycling Group is campaigning for cycling to be a bigger issue in May's local elections. So Tony, this bridge was rebuilt at quite a big cost, but for cyclists, not much better now than it was before.
There's nothing being done for cyclists at all. What we've got is a bridge which is pretty much exactly the same as it was previously. There's been no aspiration to look for something better to get some additional benefits out of the new bridge than was there on the old one. There are a number of projects, even the velodrome, we have an issue there where there was the cycle path which linked the riverside cycle path to the velodrome. That cycle access was dropped during the construction phase, and Derby Cycling Group had to fight quite hard to get it rebuilt. So if we can't have cycling infrastructure right at a cycling venue, where can we get it right?
Derby City Council says there's always more that can be done, and wherever possible it strives to improve conditions for cyclists despite increasing financial pressures.
With a £32 million velodrome about to open in Derby, it's not as if cyclists are being completely ignored. But with record amounts being spent on the roads and the railways, cyclists do feel that their needs come a distant third. So which one of you, or do both of you, use a bike?
I cycle a bit, to be fair. And I did the coast to coast last summer for breast cancer, up and over the Pennines, which is not bad for a fat lad.
It's very good for not a fat lad. Liz, what about you? Do you cycle?
No, I don't. I'm usually too tired. I would go running most mornings, so the idea of cycling on top of that I think would be just a bit too much for me.
Would you feel safe cycling? If you did cycle?
I feel safe in Leicester when I'm at home, but I think, you know, London can be, you know, it's very, very busy, the traffic there when I'm in Westminster.
I'm not sure I'd cycle in London myself. But is this an issue that we've been ignoring? I mean, after all, cycling is on the increase. More people are taking to it. Should it be higher up the agenda?
I think it should. And I mean, I occasionally Boris bike, actually, and I think Boris is the champion of cycling. And I think even he would admit that there is a challenge in terms of cycle safety in London especially. But I'm sure there's more we could learn, particularly particularly from the Dutch, from the Scandinavians, where they've got their infrastructure in a better place than we have, and we should look at those models, you know, to try and improve things here.
Labour have an 8-point manifesto pledge to help cyclists. The Liberal Democrats are big supporters of more investment in cycling. Are the Conservatives in danger of being left behind on this, Mark?
No, I think Boris is the recognised champion of cycling. You know, it was him that introduced the Boris bikes.
He's not an MP, though.
No, I think there's a chance he might be after the election.
He doesn't have to cycle on our roads up here in the East Midlands.
No, he doesn't. But, you know, I think...
But I do think if you want to take this seriously, you need a proper strategy on it. And actually, we could learn from our Welsh Labour colleagues here, because they have a requirement that when new roads or any planning is happening, you've got to take the needs of cyclists and pedestrians into account. I also think we need to look at what we can do to start young with kids in schools to give them the confidence. But the truth is, this is a difficult balancing match between people who want to cycle, people who want to drive, and people who want to get the buses or use trams. And it is tough for city councils across this area and counties to make sure you get that balance right.
It is, of course, but the government has put £77 million into cycling in 8 cities, none of them, I have to say, in the East Midlands, although there has been £7.5 million for the Peak District. So they are putting money in. How much would Labour pledge?
Well, listen, I am certainly not going to be making any spending commitments here. We'll have to look at the books and see what happens. I'd just say, look at the track record of councils like my own, which is really working to improve cycling. We've seen a 10 to 15% increase in the number of cyclists in Leicester, because we've done things like rebuild the routes in my constituency and from places like De Montfort University.
But with all the
city
cuts,
centre,
though, cycling isn't necessarily a priority for councils, though, is it?
I don't agree. I think that for my council, certainly, we really are looking at how can we, as part of the redevelopments that are taking place, give cyclists greater prominence. But let's not forget, people
but
also
you haven't
want
promised
to use,
any more money, though.
People also want to use their cars, and we also need decent bus services. You've got to get the balance right, and I want to see equal opportunities for everybody.
Some of the new routes, some of the new roads, to be fair, so the new A46 has got cycle tracks alongside it, the A453 will have, and you know, I'm not here to defend Nottingham City Council, they're not of my political persuasion, but actually some of the work they've done in and around the city of Nottingham has been quite positive, you know, and it is possible to get across the city using cycle tracks and underpasses and crossings.
Well, the idea is to do that as safely as possible and clearly not have the result that poor chap did in our film.
Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be accidents. You know, I think it's easy to fall off your bike. We need to try and minimise them with improving the infrastructure.